Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar with the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce. For those that don't know me, I'm Ray Johnson. I'm a board director and have been for a few years now, but I've been involved in the chamber movement for over 35 years. And I did one of these a week ago, so I've still got my socks off. So I'm really pleased. I've got my bare feet under the table. That's it. That's all you're getting. But I hope you enjoy today's session. It's very relevant, of course, of what we're going through with COVID-19. Don't need to remind you all of the challenges and all of the different aspects that are centered around that within business in particular. But it gives me a chance to just say a few words. So the actual title, as you know, is a proactive approach to the new normal, and also an update of the coronavirus from Brachers solicitors. So just to give you the heads up that we'll be sharing the slides with you, so you don't need to make copious notes, but you would be welcome, please, to provide any questions. We have the chat room open, so please, or don't be shy. So dealing with a crisis, I think we'd agree that all of these challenges are going to be very difficult. Today, we've got a few people that are actually furloughed, and maybe you know someone who's also been furloughed, a colleague or a friend. Why not reach out to them and mention these seminars to them, or these webinars, because I'm sure they'd be of good use. And of course, we have an archive facility as well. So some companies are finding this very challenging, understandably, but I think those that take heed and follow by changing and adapting, obviously there is no choice, but by doing so, I think those businesses within their sector will be the winners in the long term. So the new skill sets that we might have to take on board, or I'm sure you guys are working on, is looking at virtual selling, perhaps looking at video conferencing by way of pitching. So instead of going out to see people, you might want to develop a good robust program on that, and also look at their mental health side and get going with that. And today we're going to be learning a bit more in that area. So thinking ahead, looking out for best practice, and the way that you deliver that to your customers is important. But also, you don't need me to tell you, but of course, do engage with your customers, your stakeholders, and more importantly, your staff. And, again, reach out to them or to your colleagues. And I think that's very important, not particularly today, but, do make sure that you keep that on the radar. So that's an introduction from me. I want to share with you a bit of housekeeping. So we're just going to put up a slide on that. So you can see here, and those that have engaged in these sessions before, if you can keep the camera on, if possible, that would be great. Do keep your microphones on mute. So most of you have done that already, so thank you. And also, again, just to reiterate, do use the chat function for questions as well. And just to reaffirm that the session will be recorded. And again, you can catch up or share this with your colleagues and pass it on if need be. So that's great. So coming back to the theme, a proactive approach to the new normal, and also the coronavirus update, I want to introduce you over to Catherine Dorr from Brachers. And Catherine, if you'd like to begin with your presentation, that'd be great.
Great, thanks, Ray. Just sharing my screen. There's a bit of a delay at the moment, but hopefully you'll grab it. Hopefully you can all see that now. It's really lovely to be with you this afternoon, and I'm going to do 10 minutes or so to update on the furlough scheme, but more importantly to look forward to what we're seeing now, what businesses are experiencing and what we're expecting. I thought it might be helpful to just have a recap of the basic structure of the furlough scheme, but then more importantly to look at some of the changes since the furlough scheme was introduced, which seems like 3 years ago now, or it certainly does in terms of the amount of time that I've spent looking at the furlough guidance. It has been updated quite a lot, and even last week there were some further changes, and some of the little tweaks are difficult to keep up with. The basic structure as it is currently has remained as it has from the start. So as you know, employers can claim back up to 80% of furloughed employees' usual wage costs up to the limit now, plus employers' NI costs and pension contributions. The scheme is going to remain as per the original structure up to the end of July. So it's been extended a couple of times now, but as it currently runs, it will stay exactly the same up to the end of July. But then from August to October, there will be some fairly significant changes, and we'll come on to look at those as to what they might look like. From my client's perspective, I think that's the thing that's causing them not the most concern, but that one of the biggest challenges at the moment is that they're not really able to plan right now for what's going to happen from the late summer onwards, and they're having to make quite important decisions without really knowing what that's going to look like. But the minimum furlough period is currently 21 calendar days. The government guidance refers to 3 weeks, HMRC's direction to 21 calendar days, and that remains as it does currently. I thought it would be worth touching on the documentation that's required to furlough employees, because it's caused us a lot of worry, and the guidance has changed quite significantly. I'm not sure that HMRC realised quite what concern they produced in employers when they issued their guidance probably 6 weeks ago now, which said that agreement to furlough employees had to be confirmed in writing. Most employers have not had their employees confirm their agreement in writing, so they haven't got them to sign anything to say that they agree to it. They have issued letters, but they've not got the confirmation back, at which point, look, we all scrabbled around to try and get those confirmation letters back. It has subsequently been clarified, so it was clarified last week. A new HMRC direction came out last week to say that furlough arrangements just need to be confirmed in writing, and they need to set out the main terms, so main terms in connection with not being able to do any work, when individuals are expected back, those types of basic details. And the arrangement has to be incorporated into individuals' contracts. So essentially, individuals need to agree, or it needs to be the case that they haven't objected to being on furlough leave. An important element that documentation needs to be kept for 5 years. Again, that's been in the guidance from the start. We've had some important changes, and again, some recent guidance. You cannot believe how often the government guidance has been updated or changed. Some additional guidance came out last week around holiday, because there were some considerable questions, and it's really helpful guidance. I've included a link at the end to that guidance, and it confirms that individuals can take holiday, but possibly more importantly for employers can require people to take holiday whilst they're on periods of furlough leave, or indeed when they're back at work, they can ask them to cancel leave. Employees are paid as normal during periods of holiday, even whilst they're on furlough, and bank holidays can be taken as part of a holiday entitlement during a period of furlough leave. The carryover provisions have also been changed. So it's possible for individuals where they can't take all of their holiday because of the coronavirus situation, where that's not possible, they can carry forward some of their holiday into the following 2 years, but that's only, as I say, where they have not been able to take it. And the guidance indicates that people on furlough, it's not expected that they will have been prevented from taking their holiday, so they can take their holiday during periods of furlough, which in some instances for a lot of people feels a bit unfair, because they're having to take holiday at periods when they don't necessarily want to take it and when they can't go anywhere, but nonetheless that's what the guidance has now confirmed. As I say, there have been some significant changes recently announced. Scheme, as you've seen in the press, has been extended to the end of October 2020, but from August to October it will look really different. Currently individuals can't undertake any work. Some work will be allowed between August and October, and most importantly for employers, they will have to start contributing to the costs of furlough payments. We don't know what either of those arrangements look like or will look like, but we are expecting some further guidance this week. So government has said that there will be further guidance by the end of May. Announcements are normally made, as we were saying earlier, in our pre-talk. Announcements are normally made on a Friday night, which is really helpful for employers and for people advising on it, because it means you have to scrabble over the weekend to work out what's going on. But as I say, everything continues as is up to the end of July, and then August to October, some significant changes. As I said, and you'll be sent copies of the slides. I've included some of the most helpful guidance for employers and employees, and the updated holiday guidance. Some of it's really good. Guidance at the start was quite tricky, but it's improved over the period of furlough leave. So looking forward, what are we expecting and what are we seeing as employment lawyers? I think there are some immediate issues, and as I said on the slide, some longer term issues. The immediate issues that I'm dealing with are things like employees not necessarily wanting to come back to work at the moment. If their workplace has opened up, there remains some concern, and that might be because they are living with someone who's shielding, they're shielding themselves because they have a health condition that means they're vulnerable, or they're just not confident about an employer's arrangements in the workplace. As a general approach, and as employers or managers, our advice is we need to know more about an individual's reasons for not necessarily wanting to come back to work at that particular time. Health and safety measures have to be shared with employees, so obviously as much information as possible should be given to people so that they can understand the protections that have been put in place. Ultimately, unless someone is symptomatic or shielding because they have a very serious medical condition and therefore they are considered to be extremely vulnerable, in many cases individuals can be required to come back to work unless obviously they can easily work from home. But as I say, that's one of the biggest issues that we're facing at the moment. And linked to that, as I say, the health and safety challenges. We just had the track and trace launch announced. We are dealing with that and how that will dovetail in with the current health and safety arrangements. Obviously, employers have to undertake a health and safety risk assessment before individuals can be brought back into the workplace, and it's advised that is obviously individuals need to be consulted about that and ideally placed on a website where it's a larger employer. But certainly our clients are facing those health and safety issues, and working out the practical arrangements for returning to work quite challenging. In terms of longer term, and again, the purpose of this webinar is to update, but also to look forward. So longer term, we are anticipating that there will be an increase in flexible work requests. I think a lot of employers, and certainly some of our clients, have been surprised how well home working and flexible work arrangements have worked. And not only are some of their staff really enjoying that, but they're finding that it's helpful in terms of productivity, and it's a real business benefit. We anticipate that that will be part of our clients and certainly our future planning, lots more flexible working arrangements, and that has a knock-on impact on estates and property strategy. The number of clients I've spoken to who've said, I just don't think I need the office space that I've got at the moment, and I'm looking at conversions, or I'm looking at splitting leases so that I take, a proportion of the space that I currently have and give back the remainder. A lot of ours, that's part of their longer term strategy. And then on the I suppose more negative, the sad side of things, we are now starting to look at restructuring and redundancies. It's a tricky area, restructuring, particularly where you are making 20 or more redundancies in a 3-month period, and companies will probably need advice about that. As I say, we are now starting to see that wave of redundancies coming where companies are anticipating the end of furlough leave. I've given you some notes. We've touched on shielding employees because it's been such a big part of the advice that we've had to give. I've given you some summary notes which will hopefully help you deal with individuals who are shielding. So as I say, individuals who are extremely vulnerable, and that means very serious medical conditions, transplant patients, specific types of cancer, will be expected to remain away from the workplace, and in many cases, if they cease to be on furlough leave, will go on to SSP. But we've also had questions about individuals who are living with someone who is shielding, and there's some quite helpful guidance about that on the links that I've given you. It's a tricky area, so it is probably an area in which you'll need to do some more research And then just in case it helps, I've given you a couple of flow charts of how to deal with specific situations, so particularly individuals with symptoms, and then if someone is living with someone with coronavirus symptoms. There is a lot of detailed guidance, so the Chamber and the National Chamber has been really helpful in putting out the guidance, so I thought it would be helpful to give it another little plug, and also if you want some more, if you want access to some of our guidance, that's freely available, and I've given you the link there. So in general terms, I'd say the picture that we're seeing at the moment is employers struggling to keep up with developments as and when they happen. It is important to keep an eye on the guidance, but it is there, and we're starting to get a much clearer position. But most of our clients are now in the position where they're looking forward. They're making their plans for the future, and they are having to deal with these return to work health and safety issues, and then longer term.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. That's great. That's an excellent overview. We've had a couple of questions come in, so if I could run these by you. First one,
of course.
Yeah, we don't have the names, which is fine, but where individuals have to self-isolate because they are informed by the track and trace arrangements, so I appreciate this is all new, have been in contact with someone, so if somebody should come in contact with someone who has tested positive, can employers ask for evidence? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we've had some new guidance out today to align with the introduction of the track and trace scheme. You'll have seen it all on the press. So where individuals are symptomatic, it's expected that they will ask for a test, either online or phone through and arrange a test. Where they are confirmed as suffering from coronavirus, then the track and trace team will get involved, will look to track all those individuals that they have had contact with, and those individuals who've been in contact with somebody who is symptomatic will be expected to self-isolate for 14 days. So yes, I've had the question from clients, exactly that question, are we entitled to ask for evidence? And yes, you are entitled to ask for evidence, and it's expected that those people who've been told you need to self-isolate for 14 days will be given written confirmation. We think that that will be an email confirmation, so you've probably seen the self-isolation notes that can be issued by the 111 service or Public Health England. It will be that type of isolation notice we'd expect people to be given that can then be passed on to the employer.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it's hardly going to be anyone making up a story, is it? But,
well, I've had a client ask me this morning to say we are expecting a number of people to say that they've been told to self-isolate when that's not the case. And I did have one a couple of weeks ago where somebody said they'd self-isolated for 2 periods of 14 days because they said they'd had contact with somebody, with 2 different people who were symptomatic, and then they were subsequently observed doing a Deliveroo round. So we didn't necessarily believe them after that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's fine. And then another question we had: if you have to put someone on, if you've yet to put someone on furlough yet,
okay.
Would we be able to go on furlough part-time once this becomes available? So I guess really, you know, do you think that phased-in approach, you know, 50-50 kind of stuff will be available, flexibility?
Yes. So we know that no work is allowed up to the end of July. So if you put someone on furlough, that's it, no work. And that means nothing that generates revenue, nothing that supports a business. So when we did a chamber webinar previously, somebody said, can I keep up with my BD contacts? And the answer was not really. If they're friends, obviously you're not expected to break contact with them, but if that's part of your normal job, then no, you shouldn't be doing that. So that will be the case up to the end of July. From August to October, yes, people will be able to do some part-time work, but we don't know exactly what that will look like. As I say, we should get some further guidance later this week or over the weekend as to how that will work, but we're certainly anticipating that people will be able to return, as you say, potentially 50-50. I think it's been one of the challenges with the furlough scheme that a lot of employers have said, you know, I've got enough work for somebody for 2 days a week, but not 5. You know, why can't I keep them for 2 days a week and reduce the cost to the government? But it has been a very structured scheme in that sense. No work currently, and that will remain the case until the end of July.
Okay, then, Catherine, that's great. And somebody just sent one in saying that given that employers are looking to possibly reduce office space, well, that's inevitable. will the employer need to assist with their house costs, and that would go up? I think we touched on this before in another seminar, but have you got an update on that, do you think?
There isn't one currently, and yes, a number of people are asking about that. What about equipment costs, about sharing the costs of utilities, all those sorts of things. There is talk of the introduction of a specific right to request working from home. Obviously, we already have flexible work requests are already a part of our legal landscape. So no, to answer the question, no, currently there is no specific guidance as to whether an employer would be expected to share the costs, but I would think there would be something around that, certainly, if adjustments need to be made in order to make a home workplace safe. It may well be the case that an employer will have to contribute to that.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I've always used my home for a few years now, and my accountant's always said, well, what's the size of your office compared to the rest of the house? So don't get excited, guys. You're not going to have everything paid, but it'll just be a percentage. And you probably find it's quite small, but we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely. My husband and I have separate offices in the house, and never have I been more grateful. It is a marriage saver. If we had to work in the same space, I don't think we'd still be married.
Excellent. Okay, Catherine, well, we really appreciate your input on that. It's been most helpful. Maybe we can just give a round of applause. I won't clap, but just do a little clapping thing. Let's get some movement going, guys. Come on, Andrew. Don't be shy. Catherine. Excellent. Okay, so thank you for that. So we're now going to come over to our next presentation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Pip Lawrence, and Pip will tell us a bit about what she does at Wellbeing People. And the title is Move Forward in a Positive Way. Pip, are you okay to go ahead? Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Ray. As you rock on that, I keep thinking of you like a Bond villain where you're rocking back and forwards on that chair. Sorry. So hello everyone, my name's Pip Lawrence. I'm the Wellbeing Director for Wellbeing People. And I guess the first thing that I would love to ask you all, and to get you to type away in the chat box, is if you're interested in wellbeing for yourself, and if it's you, then just type you, or for your business, and if it's business, then type business in the chat, or both. So if it's a case of actually, I want to learn some tips today for myself, but then also for my business, just that then I get a better idea on how I can best help. Whilst you're doing that, I'll load my slides up. Thank you very much. Bit of both, bit of business, so we've got quite a lot. Good mix. Few for myself. Lovely. Perfect. Thanks everyone. So my background, I started as a personal trainer when I was 18, and I then in 2014 I started my own business, which really was to try and plug the gap between health and well-being. Oh, sorry, health and fitness. Because what I noticed was that we have in our society, we have emergency healthcare, which is obviously fantastic for something like what's going on at the moment, or if I was to be in a car accident or anything like that, I need emergency healthcare, and the number one job is survival. Then on the other side of the spectrum, we've got fitness, where, you know, the number one thing for fitness is to be as mentally, physically and emotionally fit as possible. That's kind of the other end of the spectrum. But what I saw was that there was a massive gap in the middle, which is the foundation of well-being. I often talk about it as in, if you were building a house, you wouldn't build a house on the side of a cliff and not put solid foundations in place. And that's what well-being really is. It's that if you want to go into that fitness side of things, then it's about making sure that you build that solid foundation first of all. So today we're going to touch on kind of 3 key things when it comes to this proactive approach to the new norm. The first thing we're going to touch on is the different way that people are managing the current situation. I've been delivering an awful lot of webinars, and it's been really fascinating to me. I ask a lot of questions in webinars, and it's been so fascinating to me to see the complete stark contrast with people. So we had a webinar that we ran at the beginning of all of this, which was a working from home webinar. And I asked the question, which I'll ask you now, is that since working from home, or since lockdown started, do you feel that your well-being has improved? And if so, say yes, or do you feel it's got worse? And so type no if you think it's got worse since being at home. And again, you can see that we've got some yeses, some nos, got quite a lot of yeses, which is interesting, a bit of mixed.
And so when this all happened, the thing that I recognized straight away, and I'm absolutely obsessed with behavioral change and people achieving their full potential, and the thing I recognized straight away was that people were presuming that their reality was everyone else's reality. And this is one of the first things that we need to address as we come into this presentation. So King's College London did a really interesting survey that you might have seen, where they basically put people into 3 groups on how they're dealing with lockdown. There was the resisting group, the suffering group, and the accepting group. So the accepting group made up around about 48% of the population. And then for me, one of the most interesting things about this group was that they were least likely to check social media for updates, which I thought was quite interesting, in terms of, we have that constant bombardment of news, don't we, that comes to us that sometimes isn't beneficial for our well-being. Then the second group, the suffering group, made up around about 44% of the nation. And the most interesting part for me, again, on this one, was that they were most likely to feel more anxious and depressed. They had much higher self-reports of that. And they were also the group that had the worst reported sleep. So they said since lockdown, it had really affected their sleep quality. And then the final group was the resisting group. And this is the group who were kind of like burying their head in the sand, didn't want to admit that lots of things are changing. And with the resisting group, they were most likely to engage in unhealthy activities, such as drinking more alcohol or using non-prescriptive drugs. And I know from talking to all sorts of my friends and talking to people on webinars and things, that you can see it, right? That people do tend to fall into these categories. And also, I think, we've been in lockdown now for what, 9 or 10 weeks, and some people have transitioned through these categories. So I'd love to know, do you feel that, just give me a yes or a no, do you feel that you started in one group and then have moved to another group? If you feel that you've changed groups, then type yes. If you feel that you've kind of stayed the same, then pop no. Definitely. Yes, yes, a few yeses. Moved groups, no. Fantastic. Okay, so for me, I was really trying to, our whole concept here at Wellbeing People is simplifying wellbeing so that it sticks. And because it's simplicity that really results in sustainability. And in the health and fitness industry, sustainability is like the magic. It's like the leprechaun at the end of the rainbow. It's like the thing that no one can seem to find. And this is really what we promote. So I thought, how can I really simplify this into terms of how our mind functions and how our body functions? And I thought, well, let's start with the brain. So the brain has all sorts of different parts and lots of different functions, and I'm not going to get too technical, too specific with it. But let's break it down into the simplest parts. We have our reptile brain, which is the oldest part of our brain, and that is our brain stem, where then our central nervous system sends signals. So for instance, we have motor neurons that go out and our brains talk into our body to tell us how to act. And then we have sensory neurons that come in. So on its simplest version of this, if you were to go to touch something that was very, very hot, your sensory neurons in your fingers would tell your brain, oh my goodness, that's really hot. And without even thinking about it, you would pull your hand away. Now, our reptile brain is really the resisting group. And I'm going to come on to why there's a similarity here. But the reptile brain is there talking to our central nervous system all of the time. It is the oldest part of the brain. It's in every single animal. Then we have our monkey brain. Now, our monkey brain is there for social and emotional. It's the part that, that you build packs. Wolves have that monkey brain. Monkeys obviously have the monkey brain. And this is our limbic system. Now, our limbic system is where, at the moment, if people are spending a lot of time there and that becomes overstimulated, this is where the suffering group kick in. Now, the part of the brain where, as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, that you want to spend most of your time is as a wise elder. And this is where the accepting group kicks in. This is also where, for your own well-being, you want to spend most of your time. And you're going to see in today's webinar that there's a common theme throughout my presentation between business and well-being, because the secrets of success on both of them are surprisingly similar. So what does this actually mean? Well, if we have a look at the change curve, and you might have seen this before, Sorry, my screen has just had a little meltdown. Give me 2 seconds. So you might have seen this before. This is the Kubler-Ross change model. And this is where a change happens, right? So something happens, whether that's a good thing like getting married or having a baby, or whether it's a bad thing like COVID-19. And we start off in this sort of like bit of a curve. Now we have a curve of denial, and that denial is that we don't like to see what's happening, and we don't like to admit that a change is going on. Now, how quickly you go through this curve will depend on which part of your brain you've been feeding over the last 10 or 20 or 30 years even. Because if we really focus on our reptile brain, then what it does is it blames others, it blames ourselves, and that's where we put our head in the sand. And this is for self-preservation. If you think about it, you know, the reason that that group would be drinking more alcohol or having more of a drug use is because they want that short-term sort of like gain. They want that short-term, get me out of this feeling like this now, so that then they don't need to focus on their current reality. Then the monkey brain, that really deals with the uncertainty. That deals with, our brain is hardwired just to go into wandering mode. So it will wander unless we train it. Now, if it constantly wanders and it keeps on going around in circles and say it's always worrying about the past, then eventually that could end up as a form of depression or low mood. Now, I'm simplifying this in terms of our mental health, but stick with me. If our brain always wanders and is always catastrophizing about the future, then that can end up as anxiety. So what we want to do is we want to try to train that monkey brain so that then it can stay in the present moment as much as possible, because in that place, it's less likely to be overstimulated on one side or overstimulated on the other side. But then it's the wise elder part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, which is best for our decision making. And also it's the part of our brain which separates us from the animal kingdom, because we can start to comprehend time. Now, this is essential because if we can comprehend time, then we can start to identify that, okay, nothing is permanent. There's always going to be changes that happen. And if we can start then looking into this part of our brain, this is where we're going to start finding the solutions, both for our business and for our well-being, because that's where we can accept our current reality. And I really love the quote, accept the things that you can't change and change the things that you can't accept, because once we start operating from that place, then we can start taking empowered action and start progressing. And that's where we come out of the change curve much more efficiently. So let's have a look on, I've simplified this webinar down, so then we're just going to focus on the reptilian needs for today. And I'm delivering this, the full webinar next week under Wellbeing People. But let's have a look at how can we then start to course correct our reptilian needs. Now, one of the things that I probably sound like a broken record if you've ever heard me say any things before, but one of the things that I am absolute an advocate of is that prioritizing your well-being is one of the very few things that every single one of us on this webinar today can do, and it have a positive impact on everything else underneath. So let me give you an example. I tend to, and as a company, we tend to work with two types of people who get stuck in a different mindset. We work with the people who get stuck in the carer's mindset, where these are typically your parents, obviously your doctors and your nurses, your carers, teachers. This carer's mindset is where they put everyone else before themselves. They are last on their priority list, and they're always just doing above and beyond to go and help other people. Actually, the industry that I started in, the personal training industry, is falling into this mindset as well, because what they do is they constantly try to help other people, but it's at their own detriment. Because the more that we always prioritize other people, well, then it's like pouring from an empty cup. Right? Once our glass is empty, we can't then start helping more people. So if we were to prioritize others, then at some point our health or well-being would suffer, which means at some point our business or work would suffer as well. Then if we went onto the other side, which is more of our, we call it the success mindset trap. And there's worse things to be addicted to than success, but there are an awful lot of people who are addicted to that success and that career gains. Now, with the work mindset trap, what happens is you prioritize your work or your career. And whilst working from home, I'm sure many of you have experienced this, where, you know, you're working longer hours because you think, oh, well, you know, I'm not commuting anymore, so I'll just work that little bit more, and I'll just turn that laptop on for a little bit longer. And what happens is that, again, we'll start to burn out at some point, because if we always prioritize our work, then at some point our health and well-being suffers, and at some point our relationships with our family and friends and the people we do want to care about suffers. So then if we go the other way and we think about, okay, well, what if I was to prioritize my health and well-being? What if I was to do what often people think is selfish, but it's actually the most selfless thing that you can do, is to put your health and well-being to the top of your priority list. The second that you do that, well, then everything else underneath benefits, because you have more energy and vitality for your work and your career. It's likely that your stress is going to come down, your resilience is going to increase, and you're going to be able to be more problem solving and creative thinking. And then also for your friends and family, you're going to be more emotionally available. So it's one of the most selfless things that you can do to make sure that you're prioritizing your well-being and putting that to the top of your list. So I'd love to know in the chat box at the moment, is your well-being at the top of your priority list? Again, just write yes if it is, or no if it's not. Let me know, or, you know, let me know, has it moved since lockdown? Oh, we've got a few yeses coming in. Amazing. No, occasionally, absolutely. Yes, it is. Lovely. Okay, so again, like I said, I was going to link to business a bit more because of today's topic. And I was once sitting in this business seminar, and I started my business in 2014 on sheer passion. I had no business experience at all, and it was on sheer passion that I started it. And I was sitting in this business seminar, maybe 2 or 3 years into me starting a business, and someone said something so simple that I was like, how have I gone this far without knowing that? And they said, to build a solid foundation for business, you need 4 key roles. You need the entrepreneur or the visionary who has that vision to go and knock down the doors. You need an operations department, which then can obviously deliver whatever it is that you're selling. You need that finance department to keep an eye on the numbers, and you need a sales and marketing department. And those 4 simple things, I was like, oh my goodness, of course, now I understand why I'm like trying to juggle so many things. And the same thing comes to well-being. There are 4 simple things. You need to get your head in the right space and have that mindset shift to switch to that place where you are, okay, I'm going to prioritize my well-being. I'm going to make that decision. You then need to understand the cornerstones of nutrition. And when it comes to nutrition, none of us are taught it in school. My biggest light bulb moment was that when I used to work on a public health contract, teaching obese children and their families how to improve their nutrition, that I accidentally shared one of the handouts with a CEO that I was working like personal training at the time. And he said, Pip, this was so insightful. And I was like, oh, that was actually meant for 5-year-olds. And it was the fact that because it was meant for 5-year-olds, that it had just broken it down really simply. Because if you don't have an interest in nutrition, then how would we ever know the things that you actually need to know when it comes to that? Then the next cornerstone is movement, and it's about embedding movement before exercise. And this is a concept that a lot of people struggle with. And we have some really simple numbers that we encourage people to do. And if you're working from home, I'm going to give you these as a bonus. So 45 is to move every 45 minutes. This can be as simple as setting an alarm. I literally, whenever I start working, I'll say the words, hey Google, set a 45-minute timer. I think it's just done it for me now. But so then it gives me a little nudge every 45 minutes. This helps with my productivity because I make sure that I'm on task with things. And it also means that I don't then stagnate and my cells then don't start to, effectively we're like a pond, you know, if we don't have that natural running water coming through, oxygenating ourselves, then we just get stagnation coming in. So if you can move every 45 minutes, you'll notice a huge increase in your productivity. The second number is 10 minutes outside. And I did spot, who was it? Was it Sally has been watching the video outside? Good job, Sally. So that 10 minutes of natural sunlight outside really helps to reset your circadian rhythm, which means that then you'll get better quality sleep in the evening. So that's an important one. And if you can make those 10 minutes 10 active minutes, then even better. I used to literally, I'd walk out of my door, walk 10 minutes around the block, and then come back into my house, and that would be when I start work. That was my commute, so that then I could get my head in that right frame. And then the final one, a lot of people don't realize, but it's 2 minutes of exertion. Now, 2 minutes of exertion does absolute wonders for your immune system. And by doing this 2 minutes, it could be anything, as much as you could do it now, stand up and march on the spot, or punch at the camera. 2 minutes of something where it gets your heart rate raised and basically supports your lymphatic system, which is your body's toxic removal system. Doing 2 minutes of something that lifts your heart rate will mean that your body will stay clearer of toxins, and your immune system won't have to come into play as much. If you're not very mobile, you can do things like dry skin brushing, and that does a similar effect as well. And then the final one then on the cornerstones is lifestyle, and that's where we really focus on how do you increase your resilience and lower your stress response, and how do you then optimize your sleep, because sleep is the magic bullet when it comes to well-being. Now, what has this all got to do with your reptilian needs? Well, right at the beginning, I said to you that your reptilian brain is connected to your central nervous system. This is the brain stem that sends information up and down to your nervous system. Now, when we overload our system, so whether that's with poor quality nutrition, whether that's with sitting for too long, whether that's with not sleeping properly or having high levels of stress, when we overload that system, well, then straight away our brain can't access the wise elder, because the reptilian's needs aren't being met. It is the absolute foundation and cornerstone that then allows you to access your monkey brain and then access the wise elder part of your brain. So if this bit's wrong to start off with, then we can't start accessing that visionary brain where we're thinking about the future. So we really focus on breaking it down and making it really simple. And we have a program called the Recalibrate Wellbeing program that does that. And the reason I'm showing you the different sessions is because you can see that actually it's small steps that you can take every single week. And one of the biggest things that people often overlook is the fact that humans can achieve incredible things, but we set ourselves up to fail because we think that we can achieve amazing things in a week, whereas actually we need to start thinking about what we can achieve in 5 years, 10 years, that side of things. Okay, so then let's have a look. I want to give you a real life example before I finish my presentation today. So Alistair did suffer with the success mindset. He will be the first to hold his hand up to say that back in 2017, his priority list looked like his business, which is Thermosphere here in Kent. His family were second, and he was very honest with me around that one. And then his volunteering was third, and then he was somewhere down the list on fourth or fifth. Now, this was in 2017, and what happened was that Alistair had a real light bulb wake-up moment because he was involved in a car accident, and that car accident was the catalyst of him going, right, okay, I'm in emergency healthcare. I really need to get my back fixed. He then went to the chiropractor to try and get his back in alignment, and the chiropractor said, look, Alistair, how many years are you going to carry on like this, like burning the candle at both ends, really pushing it with your business and ignoring your well-being because, you know, you're not invincible? And he was like, okay, right, what do you expect me to do? And Alistair came along, and I trained Alistair personally. And within a year, he'd completely transformed his well-being. He was, you can see like the weight dropped off of him. He had the brightness back in his eyes. He wasn't getting these constant headaches, which, you know, constant headaches are a big sign that your nervous system is overloaded. If you're getting random headaches all the time, it's a sign that your body's trying to give you. But then a year on from that, he was then not only leading by example in terms of his family. So his wife then came to see us and worked with one of the wellbeing coaches. His son also started taking on all of the information that we were giving Alistair and really transformed. He suffered with eczema, and it all started clearing up, and he was able to be more productive at work. And Alistair then realized that he was like, okay, I feel like a different person. So actually, let's start embedding this into my team. He has a team of around about 25. And he was like, what can we do so that then we can start giving them this information? Now, the problem most people do when they start thinking like this, they're like, right, I'm transformed, I feel better. Why is everyone else not doing this sort of stuff? And then we have this automatic thing as human beings where we start shoving it down people's throats, right? And we're like, come on, you should do this, you should do this. I can't tell you how many times I've had vegan friends tell me that you should be vegan and, you know, ramming it down my throat. And that's just not a way to involve or engage people. So when it comes to engaging people, I really love, again, the quote that is like, tell me and I'll likely forget, teach me and I might learn, but involve me. And that's where I'll really make that transformation. I've probably completely ad-libbed that, so sorry. But it's all about involving people in this journey. So when it comes to recalibrating people's well-being, whether it's your own well-being or whether it's in a business that you're looking to do this, there are 3 key steps. The first step is about engaging people. Now, when I used to do this as a personal trainer, I did it very simply. I did it with health checks. So when I very, very first started my first job at Virgin Active, I put a little sign out of the gym office that said free health checks. Now, I didn't know at the time that this was so beneficial. It's through life experience I've learned this. But from doing that health check, you're leading people to their light bulb moment. And this is the important thing, that you're not ramming anything down anyone's throat. You're literally leading them to that light bulb moment. So when you have a health check and you get your blood pressure taken and you step on the scales and you have all of these vitals taken, you're then having that light bulb moment, because it's only you who's interpreting that information. And what this means is that then once that light bulb moment occurs, that's where then you can then take people to the next step, because people will actively then either be involved and say, yep, I'm ready to make a difference, or they'll go, do you know what? It's not the right time for me right now. So with this at Wellbeing People, we do this in 2 ways. One of them is webinars, which we've obviously moved to a lot more over the last few months. It used to be workshops. And then we do health screening and wellbeing screening. And we have, unfortunately, a warehouse of interactive health kiosks sitting dormant at the moment, because obviously no one's in their workplaces. But hopefully when we're back, we'll be back doing that wellbeing screening. But you can do this for yourself. You know, if you're like, okay, right, I do need to do something about it, then the first thing that I would encourage you to do is to take some kind of baseline metric. Now, that could be as simple as taking your pulse when you first wake up in the morning. That's going to be a great metric to see what your fitness level's like and how efficient your heart is working. You could step on the scales. You could take a waist measurement. All of these things are then starting to give us that awareness of, do I need to change, or am I pretty good as it is? The next step is then to educate, and educate really comes from making sure that we're teaching people the simple messages. I don't know about you, but you know, there's obviously a lot of information around technology that's coming out at the moment with Zoom hacks and this and that. And it's the simple things that stick in my mind and that then I'm able to then actually take action on. We have this awful culture where we just overload people with information. And when we have too much information, we have analysis paralysis and we don't do anything. So educate is about doing the simple things. And it's about encouraging personal responsibility. So here at Wellbeing People, we have a license for businesses. It's $9.95. It's very low cost for businesses. And that license gives people a 50% discount for the individuals to go on to the Recalibrate Wellbeing program. That means that we've got that 50-50 investment. The business is creating the environment for the individual, but it's the individual who's either saying, yes, I'm in for this, or no, I'm not ready for this right now. So it's about creating that and having that 50-50 split. And then the final one is empowering. And this is about, like what Alistair did, it's about then once you've transformed your well-being, it's about leading with your actions and not your opinions. I can't tell you how many times I've jumped onto LinkedIn or social media and seen people who are in the well-being space doing things that aren't very, very efficient for their well-being. So it's about making sure that we're leading with our actions, not kind of just verbalizing those opinions. So I'm going to finish with just this slide, and I would highly recommend these 2 questions, that you write these 2 questions down, because we use these questions at the end of every single webinar, but I also use these with my team when I do one-to-ones. I use them anytime I'm doing coaching sessions. They are incredible questions because they really land with the person that you're saying them to. So I would love to know in the chat, just question number 1, first of all, what was the most useful thing for you from this session? Take a little second and write that first answer in the chat. Don't worry about the second one for now. 10 minutes outside, nice. And it's so simple that if we can do movement before exercise, it then generates enough energy that then we have so much energy, like me, that then you have to go and exercise because you have to get rid of it. 10 minutes outside, yep, the 45-minute break, 2 minutes of movement. Needs to go back to home economics in school. Brain responses. Lovely. So becoming aware of the fundamentals, and really that is it. It's the simple things that we do. One of the things that I encourage everyone to do whenever they start the program or any webinar I talk on is to make sure that in the morning, the very first thing that you do before you have anything else, before you have your coffee, before you have your tea, your breakfast, is to drink water. If you drink a glass of water, you'll hydrate your brain and you're straight away, I call it your internal shower. Hopefully you don't leave the house or without having an external shower, and the same thing happens then with your internal shower. You want to make sure you're waking your metabolism up. And we know that just a 5% drop in hydration can drop your productivity by up to 35%. And along with that, have a knock-on effect for your immune system, your metabolism and everything else. So yeah, it is the simple things. It's drink water and then 45, 10, 2. If those are the only things you took out of today, then that's amazing. So the second question I would love to know is, what one action will you implement as a result of this session? So we've given you some simple things. What one thing will you do as a result of this session? And then if you've got any questions, start firing those into Ray as well. 45-minute alarm, nice. Come on, let's all have a standing break. We've all been sitting down for however long. Who's with me on a standing break? Oh, have I got any movement? Yes. Thanks, Erica. Jay's up. Love it. Perfect stuff. Okay, I'm going to hand back over to you, Ray, in that case, see if there's any questions that are coming in or anyone would like anything specific answered.
That's great. Thank you, Pip. That's a most enjoyable session, actually, and very engaging, as you would expect. So I know you alluded to the bond stuff at the beginning with me, and here it is. I built a DB5 out of Lego.
Ah, see, I was thinking you were going to have a cat or something on your lap, and that's why you were rocking backwards and forwards.
I think it's obviously crucial to make sure that, you know, we look after ourselves and make sure that we, you know, well, if you like, by doing so, we're going to perform better. And a lot of people sometimes don't realise it's important within the realms of that for your family connections and friends and stuff like that. Be interesting to see how Alistair's doing now, though, I must say, after what's happened, but I'm sure he's doing all right.
So, you know what, Alistair, the really interesting thing with Alistair is he actually works very close by to us here as well, just ironically. And so he pivoted very quickly when everything was happening with COVID. So he supplies underfloor heating predominantly. But with that underfloor heating, he has big connections to China, and he pivoted very, very quickly. So like I said, that change curve, all of us go through it, but it's how quickly we can go through it and start seeing that opportunity. And he pivoted so quickly that he actually, if you go onto his website, Thermosphere website, they supply incredible amounts of sanitizer to key workers, to all sorts of over the place, because he had those connections to China and was able to see that opportunity and not get caught into that fear of the reptile or the monkey. But you know, had that happened a few years ago, it, you know, obviously we don't know, but that could have been the bit that pushed his nervous system to the edge. And that's what we always talk about, that, you know, it's about making sure that you can, when it comes to your own resilience, that you can manage your stress levels as much as possible. And ultimately our well-being is the foundation of those stress levels.
Yeah, sure, definitely. There's been some brilliant feedback, people saying really enjoying this session, even whilst you was on the roll there. But let's have a question here. We've got, what would you recommend if you know someone who is clearly not looking after their well-being? It is affecting their day-to-day life and they won't seek help. Well, what do you think? I know you've covered it, but any tips for that person to carry on? So instead of doing it yourself, what about other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to other people, it really is about asking those empowering questions. I'm a really big fan of, a lot of people will say, how are you? But we say it very flippantly, don't we? We say like, oh, how are you today? But we're not really listening to the answer. And so I'm a big fan of actually just adding something in there that makes people stop in their tracks. So adding like 3 little words of out of 10. So how are you out of 10 today? Means that people then have to start self-reflecting. And I mean, one of our webinars literally is just that. It's about getting people to self-reflect. I ask people, how would you rate your well-being out of 10? If you put together your mental, physical and emotional well-being all into one place, how would you rate it out of 10? Because ultimately, all of us are the experts when it comes to our own well-being. We can take advice, we can listen to information, but we're the experts on ourselves. And so when you get people to self-reflect, what you're doing is you're helping them to pull their head out the sand. So it's about asking those empowering questions rather than dictating or telling, because if they're anything like me, if someone tells me a rule, I'm likely to just do the opposite to whatever it is that they've told me. So ask those empowering questions and lead people to their own answers. And that's really how you make incredible change in individuals.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's almost, dare I say, psychological, really. When I was running my business, I always made sure we had a very open environment and people were able to talk to each other, engage. And I think that's one of the real benefits of having long-term staff, in that respect, because of that, or part of it, part of the package, if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
Care for your colleagues, and then they will care for you back, and it all works out like a good process in that respect. But so thanks again, Pip, for your presentation. Somebody mentioned just about the information you provided about the King's College, but I take it we can get that link, can't we?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll send the link across. It's a really like full article that they put in, and you can see the different age groups and how they break into them and things. So yeah, I'll make sure that I drop that across to Molly, and I'm sure she'll be able to send it out.
Okay, well, round of applause for Pip, everyone. Come on, let's see some movement. I know it's sad, but it's good for you. But yeah, thank you again, Pip. And just want to come back to Catherine. Catherine, coming back to your presentation where you was talking about people being furloughed and, until the end of July. And of course, if some people haven't reached out to charities, now would be a good time if they haven't already done so. I've connected a few parties together, if you like, where they're just helping with their expertise. So they've been able to help with spreadsheets, accounts and marketing. So it's all of that kind of stuff. So just bear that in mind, guys. If again, your colleagues, that'd be a good thing to move on and to support those areas as well. And thank you to your company for being a patron. So some of you will be aware that we have a patronage system, and do check out that on the website. And there's plenty more information that you can as I say, get from our website as well. So we're nearly through. We don't need to go away just yet because we've got a couple of dates just coming up for you. And then we will ask you to just fill in a poll questionnaire, I think, with our colleagues here today. So we have Molly and Neil that have been hosting today, and they've been doing a great job. They always work behind the scenes and really impressed with what they're doing. So I won't read these through, but again, these will be sent to you so you can keep an eye out, but do book them in. Again, they're free, and do recommend these to other businesses. And I think for the time being, give us a nod if you like, Molly, but I think these are free for the time being for other businesses. So within the Kent region. So for the time being, I think that it's going to change, but keep an eye out for that. So that's great. So that's the dates coming up. So we've got the questionnaire set. Molly, did you want to pull that through? So if you could quickly answer these would be great. I know you're quite accustomed to doing these things now. So if you could just flick through and give us some feedback on these questions, that would be really helpful, because the guys at HQ want to make sure that we're delivering relevant subject matters. And obviously during this period, it's even more crucial. So I think I can agree with you what's coming through there if you can see it, but it's very positive all round. So I think we'll just close that down in a second when that's ready. And then it'll be time to say goodbye in a second. But like people were saying, to go out and get a bit of fresh air. I think a couple of you are already in the garden actually, which is very impressive. So you've got a very good Wi-Fi connection, not quite the same for me here. But it leaves me to say thank you to our presenters again. Thank you to the team today. Thank you for you guys participating. And again, do share the links over, because this will all been recorded and it's all going to be available on a website soon. And do come back to another session when you can. So goodbye for now.